All right, everybody, welcome back into the Auburn Live Basketball Show. Appreciate everybody for joining us. I'm Justin Hokanson. With me, as always, is Mr. Alan Head. What's up? What you doing?
Living the dream, man. It's about middle of the day on a Monday, so I snuck out of the office for a little bit, and interested to talk about some basketball with you. Obviously, huge matchup against Tennessee this past weekend, and another big week to come.
Big week to come. Let's talk about that in just a second. Quick shout out to our main sponsor of the show, Session Cocktail, downtown Auburn, right there on Magnolia Avenue. Go check them out. Happy hour 4 to 7. Obviously, the weekend's great place to go have a drink. Great old fashioned. By the way, I have not been an old fashioned person my entire life, and all of a sudden,
Got a taste for it.
it kind of hit me. Like for my whole life, I don't know if it was the bitters or something. I was like, but all of a sudden, I like it. It just, I don't know, like something clicked where I'm like, oh, not bad. But they make a great old fashioned. So go check them out. Tell them, go say hey to, if you see the owner, Hunter, if you see him in there, if he's in there, if you know him, tell him we sent you. But yeah, give him a plug. That helps us, obviously. But good friends of the show, great place to go have a drink before or after dinner. If you're in town for a basketball game, great spot to go early and have a drink, and you're already downtown. You can pop over to the basketball game and all that good stuff. So go check them out, Session Cocktail in downtown Auburn. And if you go to the Alabama game in Tuscaloosa, they have one in Tuscaloosa too. So if you've been to the one in Auburn and you kind of like the setup and like the drinks, and you're going to go to the basketball game in Tuscaloosa or football next fall or whatever, well, no, it'd be 2 years, but basketball game, go check them out there as well. I'm trying to talk him into a Birmingham location. We'll see how that goes. Being from Birmingham, I'm trying to talk him into like, I don't know, Homewood or something like that. I feel like it would fit. So I don't know. We'll see if he does it or not. Okay. Auburn basketball. That was a grind. 53-51 winners over Tennessee. Definitely more low scoring than we thought. I think the over under was about 1 set, which was tad high. It was like 140 or something like that. Somebody told me. I was thinking it would be, 125, 130. I was thinking, we talked about that 70 number that I thought if Auburn could get to, that would be great. But man, both teams just really, really struggled to hit shots, 3-pointers combined. Let's see what threes were combined for this game. I still have the stats pulled up. 7 of 42 was 3-point shooting in that game combined. Both teams shot just 31% from the field. It was very close. I mean, Tennessee hit 17 shots. Auburn hit 18 shots. It was, Auburn hit 2 more 2-point baskets. Auburn made 1 more free throw. They went to the line within, the free throw attempts were nearly even. Turnovers, Auburn was +1 there, nearly even. Rebounding, Auburn won that by 4. Defensive rebounds, nearly even. Auburn won offensive rebounding by 5. Second chance points, dead even. Bench points, Auburn got them by 14, but that's not surprising. Tennessee's not a super deep team, and when you have Tahad Pettiford, come off the bench and get you 8. And technically Broome came off the bench, so that sort of can inflate that number a little bit.
Right.
Points in the paint, nearly even. Auburn was +4 there. Blocks, Auburn again with 9. I mean, Auburn's ability to block shots is remarkable. Even some of their guards. I mean, they continue to lead the country in blocks. Steals, nearly even. Pettiford had a good game with 3 of those. I mean, basically dead even. Assists, 11 and 10, dead even. I mean, so across the board, just completely dead even game, and that's what you get, 53-51. And just kind of a barn burner. I don't know that any team got outside of 6. I think Auburn maybe had a 6-point lead early or something like that. Of course, Tennessee had the 4-point lead there in the final minutes, but I don't think anybody got outside of a 6-point margin. And it was a game where Auburn wins, technically Auburn wins in the final seconds, but Auburn led in that game for over 24 minutes. Tennessee only led for 6 minutes. So you kind of look at how Auburn won and think maybe they lucked out or came from behind or whatever, which they kind of did in the final minutes, but they led the majority of the game. Tennessee just went on a little bit of run late and made it dicey. But what were kind of your takeaways from Auburn's 18th win of the season, 7th ranked win, 11th quad 1 win?
Not probably stylistically the game that Bruce wanted to play from an offensive standpoint, right? But you will take a win against the number 6 team in the country any which way you can get it. And I'm not trying to be overly Pollyanna when I say that. It just sometimes you got to survive in advance and move on to the next one and
Mhm.
realize that you just put a resume game together for yourself, because anytime you can notch your 11th quad one win, it's huge for you. And at the end of the day, even though the eye test is factored into some of the final seating, people are not going to look back at that game and hold that against Auburn.
Yeah.
So the biggest takeaway is you got the win. Now, I think you have to give credit to Tennessee for obviously playing with an extreme amount of effort and energy on the defensive side. Auburn the same way, right? I mean, they absolutely were playing with a level of energy on the defensive side of the court that probably affected some of their offense. I think that's fair to say. Did it affect it to the point that it probably manifested itself into Auburn's worst shooting performance of the season? No. I think there were some rush shots, some bad shots, and again, credit Tennessee for creating some of that. I think sometimes you just have to tip your hat to the other team and realize that they are a factor in this as well. But when you had to have it, Janai Broome came up with big points. Miles Kelly, who is having a really tough shooting, and I think 2 for 8 in total, hit 2 threes in the span of about 4 minutes there. That first on a pin down, coming around the top of the circle, and absolutely you knew he was ready to fire that one when he got it. And the other one, obviously, Janai with a nice touch pass there off of his own deflection for missed shot, and gets it out there to him. And Miles did what he did what he needed to do, which was hit a clutch bucket to ice that for Auburn pretty much. Now you had to go and play defense for a couple more stretches there, and you had to survive a last second shot that looked good coming out of the
Mhm.
hand, right? I mean, it didn't look like a terrible shot, but at the end of the day, you get a victory. And I think that's what you got to walk away with and realize that you face some adversity. Your best player was obviously not 100%, and yet he still contributed 16 points, 13 rebounds, and as Bruce famously said, a triple double with 12 missed shots, right?
It did, yeah.
And he was waiting to break that one out. I could tell Bruce was kind of smiling
19. He
right
shot
before he said it.
19 shots.
It's 19 shots, right? And I don't know at what percentage he went at, Justin. I would guess somewhere around 80 is what he looked like to me. I don't think in any way um, he was anywhere close to 100. You could tell on some of the long rebounds and effort and energy plays, he just didn't have that same gear that he typically has. He was a little slow to react in certain situations because he couldn't. Just trying to play off that ankle, and it wasn't quite there. But I don't know that Janai's game has ever been built off extreme athleticism. He is a technically sound player that makes plays using his body and creating space in a way that not a lot of players can. And so, anytime I kind of equate it to when Michael Jordan started to slow later in his career, and you could tell he didn't have that same athleticism that he played with early on with those early 90s Bulls teams. He started to play the mental game a little bit, and he was able to beat guys with his mind. And Janai, with how he sets himself in the post, the positioning he gets, how he can create angles and separation with his body, that was on display. And you had to have every bit of that against Tennessee to win that game. So while it's not the prettiest game again, it is a win all the same. It is one you had to fight through adversity to get, and you continue on and you're undefeated in SEC play, and you've notched your 11th win. So a lot of positives that come from this, and even the teachable moments, I think are positive because you get to walk away from a performance like that with a win, and there's something to be said for that as well.
Yeah, I would agree. 33 minutes from Broome, definitely more than I think anybody thought.
Sure.
It was a thing going in where they were just sort of monitoring it. I talked to somebody Friday. I posted on the board Saturday morning that, he practiced with the twos through when they were practicing sets and stuff in preparation for Tennessee. And then I posted, a couple hours for the game, I guess, that final confirmation that he was going to play, but he wasn't going to start. And they really just were going to see how it goes. After that first rotation, he went on the bench and he had ice on there, and that was just a precautionary thing. And then he and then he was effective, and so he stayed out there for long stretches. And honestly, um, you know, staying out there, assuming his stamina was good, which was probably gonna be good. It's not like he missed a month. I think guys like that, he's still rehabbing, he's still doing things to stay somewhat in shape. So missing essentially a week of running around, he kind of got back out there, took the boot off midweek, and started running and stuff. So he didn't miss a ton of time. So in terms of stamina, he was still in good shape. Like, it's not like he was out long enough where all of a sudden he didn't have the motor or the battery or the energy. But I thought that his ability to stay out on the court, honestly, was a good thing for that ankle. I mean, I think when you have a sore ankle like that, especially, even when you're coming back from it, sometimes getting out there, moving on it, and then going and sitting down can create more soreness. And so assuming his stamina was up to par, it probably wasn't a bad thing that he stayed on the court a lot. He didn't have to go over there and sit and let it get stiff, or, swell or have any kind of inflammation. He just kind of kept moving on it, which is probably a good thing. But yeah, it was an interesting game. I mean, Tahad, Miles, Denver, Chad go 5 for 30. And you win. But again, Auburn's offense has been very efficient this year, obviously, but their defense continues to be, I think, somewhat underrated because they've been efficiently on offense. I mean, Chaz Lanier's 4 of 11, 10 points. That dude can score. I was a little concerned about that. And that's something you also got to think about when you watch some of the game, depending on who Auburn plays. They exert a lot of energy on defense. Chad does a great job on defense. And so sometimes you see, like, go back to the Texas first half game, the first half of Texas, for instance. Chad shot like 1 or 2 shots.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's down there chasing around Trey Johnson and shutting him down. And so, you look at some of these games where Chaz, they didn't let him get the ball. I mean, he had a couple of late threes. If not for those two, one was fast break, one Jakai was late closing out. Like, they kind of shut him down. Zakai Ziegler had 14 points, but 6 are from the free throw line, and he went 4 of 15. He went 0 for 6 from 3. That's your best to once again, Auburn's defense just does a phenomenal job. Tennessee's just one of those games. They're one of those teams, and honestly, it's kind of how teams, I think, sometimes feel when they play Auburn. When you play a team that's that physical, and Tennessee's another level because I think they might be even more. They're more physically opposing than Auburn. Auburn plays hard and knows what they're doing, and Auburn, but Tennessee's got some like well-built dudes.
Yes.
So when you play them and they're that good and they play that good at defense and you're exerting so much energy on defense, that's partially why teams, I think, shoot low percentages against Tennessee. You get down there on offense and you're tired. And then when you do get an open look, you're like, oh my gosh, I have an open look. It probably shocks you a little bit. So hopefully they can sort of start to find some rhythm again. That's really the last 2 games have been their 2 offensively been their 2 worst games of the season, back to back, Georgia and Tennessee. Both those are really good defenses. Broome wasn't at Georgia. So hopefully they can find a little bit of rhythm. Tennessee's a great defense, and so you don't want to take too much away from them, but would like to see Auburn start to kick it, find a little bit of the rhythm they had in non-conference back a little bit. We'll see if they can do it at LSU. The only negative is Denver Jones at the moment. Really 2 bad games from him, 7 turnovers and only 2 assists in the last 2 games for him. Went 0 for 8 against Tennessee. Just 2 games where I think the ball pressure seemed to impact him. Had a couple of good looks against Tennessee that he didn't knock down that he normally would. But the 7 turnovers and 2 assists in 2 games is not great. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves and sort of project, but as you go, and certainly in the postseason, you're going to face teams that can create ball pressure. You're not going to get that far if you can't and play good defense. So I'd like to see him sort of get back in a little bit of a groove, handling the basketball and facilitating things. I thought Tahad forced some things in that Tennessee game at times, but still made some big buckets. He's a second half. Georgia, he was a first half guy, but so much this year he's been a second half guy. Like, he kind of feels it out in the first half more times than not. And then second half, watch out. Like, if Auburn's kind of struggling,
Mhm.
If they're rolling, okay, but if it's sort of struggling, he has a tendency in the second half to. I texted somebody. I'm like, Todd is gonna. He is come postseason. He is gonna be outside of Janai and Chad, who I think are just sort of Todd, maybe even more so. Outside of Janai, Todd might be the most important player on this team
I
because
agree.
when it gets tough to run offense, Tahad can create buckets out of nothing. Sometimes he forces it, but he's like the one guy. Like Chad can't really off the dribble is tough for him. He needs to be moving, spot up. Tahad can just create something out of nothing, and that's going to be more valuable and more valuable as the season goes on. But yeah, Denver's really the only negative. Maybe just trying to get him back on track a little bit. But look, that's 2 games in a row. The other positive is it's 2 games in a row where you were maybe a little concerned about how we're going to rebound. 2 physical teams, 2 teams that rebound well. You out-rebounded Georgia and Tennessee. Not bad. After some games where you were out-rebounded. So that's been nice to see, whether it's Chad or Miles or somebody getting down there and rebounding. So that's been nice to see as well. But that's definitely a game you just get a W. You just grind it out and you get a W and you move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say this, and you're right about Denver. It is 2 straight games where he's had issues initiating the offense. Extended ball pressure has gotten the better of him. And you can tell that offensively speaking, he's just out of rhythm right now. And he forced a couple of shots. And you're right, there were some open threes there that he took that just didn't go down for him. Others he rushed and or went to go to the cup and got denied. And they did a really good job. Auburn does this exceptionally well as far as funneling things to their big guys. I thought Tennessee did the same thing, and they were tough at the rim. But a bounce back game for Chaney. Now that's the one that he was probably Auburn's most efficient offensive player. I think 10 points on 5 of 8 shooting, 4 rebounds with 25 minutes. And I felt like he had enough juice to give you more. It was surprising, I'm with you, that Dylan didn't play a little bit more and Janai less, but I think that had to do with – and I think you're right, because once you get a sprain or a tight ligament loosened up, the worst thing you can do is start to sit down at that point because then it's going to tighten again. And because Bruce knew that he was going to need Janai in that game, he couldn't afford for him to have to wait to get warmed back up. It was a situation where you needed him to remain loose and in rhythm. As Janai continues to come back, I think they'll start to move back into what's been more natural for them early on, as far as kind of running some of the offense through him. And things will get a little bit easier or a little bit cleaner. But you're right about creation, about being able to create. Tahad is the one guy. He is really on the perimeter, your only creator, because Miles is a shooter. Okay, Denver can create some, but I wouldn't say that's his strength, right? And Chad, again, with his length, basketball IQ, he's crafty. He figures out ways to score. But I wouldn't say he absolutely is able to create for himself all that much off the bounce. And I thought Meshack did a good job of bodying him up and affecting him and playing a physical style that kind of Chad's going to have to get used to. Not every team is going to play him that way because they don't have a Meshack on their roster. But they're going to have to be prepared for that because this kind of performance on a neutral court in the tournament could get you beat, right?
Yeah, for sure.
They won this one because they're at home and because they got exceptional effort, I think, out of Janai and some timely shooting. But this will be something they'll need to clean up, be more prepared for to combat a physical team like a Tennessee. Now, I tend to believe that most games won't be officiated this way. I mean, they let a lot go, a lot, and on both sides, right? They tend to call tournament games a little tighter. But again, at the end of the day, I don't want to beat a dead horse too much, but a win is a win is a win. You got one, you grinded it out, you move on, you learn from it. And now realistically, the question for me is, what does Janai look like on the road? What does this team look like on the road? The rest of the team, right? How much in rhythm can they play against LSU, which is a team that gave Alabama in Tuscaloosa a really tough game. They're an improving team, significantly better than last year, much more technically sound. And so this is on the road in the SEC is not easy. As you transition, you've got 2 straight road games, 2 teams that need a win in both LSU and Ole Miss. Ole Miss definitely needs a win to stay
Mhm.
in competition in the SEC for a championship if they're going to play for any legitimacy and or even a tournament berth. So it doesn't get any easier for Auburn, but you'll take your wins where you get it. And again, you talked about 11 quad one wins. You played 10 quad one opponents all season last year, and that number will fluctuate, right? As the rest of the season bears itself out. Maybe North Carolina becomes a quad two. Who knows, right? They're not playing great right now, but it's incredible the schedule they've played to this point, the fact of where they are, number one team in the country, and the atmosphere that you had on display. I mean, I think that's as loud as I have ever heard Neville Arena, especially at certain moments when big plays happened.
Yeah, I'm looking at North Carolina sitting at 40, so neutral sites top 50, I think.
Yep.
So they're still in there for now. If they keep winning the majority, they should stick in there. Let's see where Missouri was the other one I was curious about, but they've won a few, so they're up to 20. They're up to 24. So that's a home game that's got to stay inside the top 30.
Yes.
I think
Is it
so.
30 or 32? One of
They're
those
kind of on
numbers.
the line. So if Missouri were to start losing some games, they could slip out of the quad one territory. So North Carolina, Missouri, but yeah, everything else quad one wise, I'd have to go look. Everything else quad one wise is pretty secure. Memphis is 43. So that's, they need to keep winning. So there's a couple that are sort of on the line there that if they tank and start losing, they could cost Auburn a quad one. But I mean, we know what Auburn still has left. You've still got Bama twice, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Florida, Ole Miss twice.
Mm-hmm.
And so you still got a ton of quad ones left. You got 3 more than Oregon at the moment, and that stuff matters for seeding. When we talk about those quad one wins, that matters when it comes down to seeding. If you've got an opportunity for Auburn to get a 1 seed, or if Auburn's competing with somebody else, that's a big deal. If you can point and go, God, they got 4 more quad one wins, and not just 4 more. They played a ton of games in general, so that stuff can, that's an NCAA net, stat. Those quad
Yes.
one wins. It's absolutely something they're going to look at, and obviously strength of schedule, things like that. So getting those quad ones is important. 11, of course, is now a new regular season record for the SEC. Alabama had won 10 if 22-23. Was that Brandon Miller's year?
Yes.
So Auburn had already had 10. Alabama won 10 that year in the regular season. Now, Alabama that year made a run, won a few in the tournament. So I'm not sure what the overall record might be 13, 14, which
Sure.
obviously is in reach. So Auburn's currently got the regular season record, could definitely hold, could definitely break the record for most quad one wins in a season, as far as SEC goes. So we'll see how that goes. 7 ranked wins. That's not changing because that's at the time you play them. So 7 ranked wins is a new program record, and gosh knows that's going to grow because you still got, a number of ranked games ahead, and you assume Auburn's obviously going to win their share. So, yeah, big week. LSU. I was just looking at LSU's schedule. Of course, they're 1-5 in the league. They haven't really gotten destroyed. I mean, Missouri. They went to Missouri, lost by 16. But you've got a road loss at Alabama by 7. You've got a road loss at A&M by 11. You've got a 12-point loss at Ole Miss. You've got an 8-point loss at home to Vanderbilt. So Vanderbilt went in there and won by 8 and scored 80. Vanderbilt can score. I mean, Vanderbilt's got, by the way, back-to-back weekends of beating Tennessee and Kentucky.
Yes.
And then LSU's only conference win is Arkansas at home, beat them by 4. But yeah, I mean, in Alabama, I didn't watch that game, but if of course, Mark Sears didn't play and struggled, so that probably plays a part. But you hold Alabama to 80 in Tuscaloosa, that's not terrible. So I'm looking through their kind of what kind of team they are. I mean, they're a top 50 defense. They're top 20 in effective field goal percentage defense. They're a top 15 2-point percentage defense. So there's some things they're doing well defensively, maybe interior wise. Offensively, they're a terrible 3-point shooting team. They're in the 300s. They're only shooting 31% from 3 as a team. They turn the ball over. Looks like their turnover rate is in the 300s nationally, so they can turn the ball over. They don't shoot the three particularly well. So as far as this game, I mean, Auburn's defense, you're talking about a team that turns the ball over. Auburn doesn't force tons of turnovers, but this is a game where I think Auburn can get some stops and force some turnovers maybe. They don't shoot the three particularly well. They're a top 25 2-point percent team on the offensive side. So seems like maybe the interior is their game. Decent on defense, but certainly a game where Auburn should go in there and win. The analytics say Auburn should win this game by 14 and 82-68. So if Auburn can get back to a little bit of flow offensively, they'll be in good shape. But yeah, I mean, Auburn's season low in threes with just 3. I think the other one was they hit 6 against Kent State. I mean, offensively, it was definitely the worst game of the year. Effective field goal percentage easily 33%. The next lowest game they had was 47%, which was Georgia. So like literally the last 2 games have been Auburn's worst 2 offensive games from 2-point for sure. So Auburn was 14 of 38 from 2-point range against Georgia. They were 15 of 39. So the last 2 games, what was that? 29 of almost 80.
Yes.
Inside the arc. That's not going to cut it. So part of that's missing Broom. Broom was a little banged up, so he maybe missed some chippies. And then against Georgia, they missed a ton of easy stuff all week. I went to practice all week, and the amount of times the coaches were harping on them, I can't remember the number they calling out, but multiple practices last week, they kept calling out over 20 misses around the basket finishes, what they were calling finishes that they thought they missed against Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, during practice, every single set they ran, they were yelling at the guys to finish everything. Everything needed to have a finish. Even if we're just running a set, you shoot it, somebody get the rebound and finish it, because they thought they missed a ton against Georgia. Tennessee sort of a lot of in there. So that's certainly got to improve stuff around the basket. But defensively, you can make the argument it was the best game of the year. I mean, certainly some of the analytics put it in one of the top 2 or 3 performances of the year, but given the opponent and the stage, I think it was Auburn's best defensive performance of the
Agreed.
year. You mentioned Chaney, 10 and 4. The stop at the end of going vertical and not drawing a foul,
yes,
was huge. And Chaney had some buckets on that flex cut in the second half. I think the one thing I didn't love about what Auburn did on offense is, again, Tennessee, give them credit, but I thought Auburn got impatient. Yes. I'm not sure why. A lot of one-on-one, almost like they didn't trust their stuff. They didn't run, pass the ball, move. You got, I don't know, I wish that you got plenty of time at the end of the shot clock to go one-on-one if that's what you feel like you need to do. It was too much one-on-one after a pass or 2. And that's not how you handle a really good defense. That's not going to cut it. So when they ran stuff, I mean, you saw Janai had some buckets. Chaney had some flex screens. Miles top of the key 3. When they ran their stuff and trusted it, there was some shots created. But when they didn't feel like they were trusting their stuff, when they got a little impatient, maybe get a little frustrated, whatever, they just kind of sort of threw it out and went one-on-one. I didn't love some of that. So we'll see Wednesday if they can maybe look a little bit more confident in their stuff and get back to a little bit of flow. It's been outside of Mississippi State in league play. It hadn't been like non-conference. Missouri a little bit, but Missouri's a pretty good team. Carolina was a struggle. Georgia was a struggle. Texas was a struggle in the second half. Tennessee was a struggle all game. So other than Mississippi State, there hasn't been some of the flow you saw in some of the non-conference games in league play. So it'd be nice to go down to LSU, get a little flow back,
sure,
go 80 plus, and take care of business. If they go into LSU and score 74 or or something, I might start to, even if they win, I might start to go, okay, now we're kind of trending here of the offensive flow sort of lost a little bit. I want to see them to get a little bit of that back,
And I think they have an opportunity to do that. I mean, you talked about LSU, and from a personnel standpoint, I think Auburn can absolutely. They don't pressure the ball in the same way that Georgia or Tennessee do, and not many people can with the way Tennessee does. I mean, they create deflections and turnovers and get in the passing lane better than anybody. But I think this will be a game that will be more relaxed. Chad, and to your point, you're right. There was too much of ball pressure got extended. Guys got either anxious or nervous about being out there, and then they started trying to create one-on-one as opposed to standing firm and making the extra pass, right? Like rotating the basketball and reversing it from side to side to try to create angles for yourself for a better or cleaner pass to the interior or a kick out three. So there are things that can be done. And I think Bruce is really good at this as far as letting these guys play some to figure things out, because I think he's got their attention now. Playing that way, and you can put up their numbers. And he'll hammer this, I guarantee it, at the next practice of you were this, this, and this. Is this what we're going to get from you moving forward? Because if you play this way, we're going to get beat. And so he'll get them to buy in and concentrate more. Because you're right. There were some flex cut options there. I thought they could have gone back to that more if they hold up better against that extended ball pressure and just stand firm, right? Don't get nervous and try to take your guy off the dribble every time, because they rotated and then you find yourself with it, in a 2-on-1 situation where you've just dribbled yourself into an issue. I saw Chad do that more than once, even resulting in the time that he got fouled on the 3-point shot, falling backwards and flailing that up. It wasn't a great shot. He just got bailed out. Yeah, got bailed out on the play. So I do believe LSU is an opportunity for a get-right game. That's what I would call it, against a decent opponent, because, again, you're right. They held Alabama 280 in Tuscaloosa, and we don't know what all the issues were with Mark Sears. But, again, that's a number that's pretty formative when you're playing a team that's as offensively talented as they are. So know that while you have an opportunity, you're still not playing against a bum either. This isn't, little sister of the poor. This is an SEC team, and the middle of this league is better than I can ever remember. And then you carry that forward against a team that's significantly smaller than you in the post in LSU, and you have an opportunity to hammer them on the boards and get some easy stickbacks, but they're good on the perimeter. So this is a shape-up game for that game that you're going to play in Oxford with an above-average opponent as well. And it'll be interesting to see how this week shakes out, because I'm with you. In these next two games, if Auburn doesn't look better offensively, well, now you've got some legitimate questions as to, can they right this? You know what I mean? Can they figure out a way to create more offensive flow and so things don't stagnate and you see guys going one-on-one as much as you've seen that last game? I would say some of Georgia too, because Tahad had to, but he made shots, which is the difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Bruce said after the game, he said, kind of at this point, the book's out on everybody. So certainly league play, not to mention you get in league play and people know you anyway.
Yes.
And so, there's certainly something to be said about Auburn's efficiency numbers on offense are going to come down. I mean, this group of guys, Miles wasn't here last year. Tahad wasn't here last year. Denver wasn't running the point. So when he played, Iowa State or Duke or Memphis, whatever, not a ton of tape out there, and they were really playing well. And now I would, efficiency numbers are probably going to come down a little bit. Teams know you, the book's out on you a little bit. And Tennessee's just those coaches know each other so well. It's crazy, in addition to just them being really good defensively. But yeah, I mean, LSU's a competitive team. I mean, look at Kansas State's they beat Kansas State. They're Kansas State's about 90 in the ratings. They beat Kansas State on the road. Pittsburgh is a top 50 team. They lost by 10. Central Florida is a top 60 team. They beat them on a neutral court. Florida State's a top 70 team. They beat them. SMU, top 60 team, lost by 10. So, they're competitive. I mean, there's no game. I mean, you're looking through here. They've played some okay teams. They haven't just completely gotten wiped off the floor. They just, I think they just don't quite have the roster maybe to get over the hump in some of these games. But it's definitely a game you go down there and continue to you play impatient again on offense, take some forced shots, take some bad shots, and mess around, and it'll be close. One of the things Janai talked about after the Tennessee game that's kind of an interesting thing to think about is, you think about where Auburn is right now, number one in the country, all the quad one wins, all where they are in the analytics, everything they've accomplished, Maui championship, but 6 games that they've won on 5 points or less. Part of that's they've played a really hard schedule. But, you think about Houston, they had to come back and win. Iowa State, they
Yes.
had to come back and win. Carolina, right, held on without Janai. Georgia dogfight. Tennessee dogfight. So they've won some really close games, whereas last year, every time they won, they blew them out. I mean, I have to go back and look. There was a stretch last year where every single win was 10, 15 points. I mean,
Yes.
they didn't have any close game. That's why the analytics loved them last year. They didn't necessarily play a monster non-conference schedule, but they were just murdering folks. And then when they lost, it was close. So, it is an interesting something to keep an eye on is how good this team has been in terms of the rankings and what they've accomplished, but a lot more close games than they had last year. And sort of how that might play out, how that might help them down the road. Can't hurt. Can't hurt to play who cares about the analytics, really? Can't hurt to go through some of these battles and trials to keep you level-headed, to prepare you, to go through the fire, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's easy for then Bruce to come in there and go, I told you guys, everything's a dogfight, Don't think you're just going to roll out there. That's not what's going to happen in this league,
No, I'm with you. And there's something to be said, like you said, of learning to play with adversity and have to come from behind, because I do think that plagued Auburn, particularly in the Yale game last year in the tournament. They had control of that game until probably about 5 minutes left to go. And then when they got behind, you could tell they just didn't know how to react in that situation.
Felt the pressure.
Right. They felt the pressure. Well, now you felt the pressure in a couple of times when you've been able to manufacture wins. And I think I'm with you. This Tennessee game, that Iowa State game, that Houston game are the ones that are on my mind right now, where you played a really quality opponent and you found a way, even though Auburn was leading Tennessee for the majority of that game, you found a way when you had to get a clutch bucket and then get a defensive stop on the other end. And that will pay dividends as you move towards March.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to go back and look not just at the closeness of those games, but I may go back and look kind of where things were like at the 4-minute mark or so. Obviously under 4 against Tennessee, they're losing by 4. They closed that game on a 6-0 run. Houston, let's see. Houston is, they're down 1 with 4:29 left. They take a lead with about 4 minutes left. So that's basically an even game with 4 minutes left. You close it out. You think about South Carolina, right? They held South Carolina scoreless for like the last 5 minutes of that game.
And they're tough at home. I mean, look,
yeah,
South Carolina is flirting with beating somebody.
Texas, they were in good shape. Texas sort of closed that gap.
Yeah.
With Auburn was up. With 3 minutes, Auburn was up 11, and then Texas hit some shots late. So that was one where they kind of just sort of had to hold on at the end. But some of these wins with 4 minutes to go, it was anybody's game, and they closed against Houston. They closed defensively almost as much as anything, closed against South Carolina. So in the last 5 minutes against Carolina, they don't score. In the last 3 to 4 minutes, Tennessee, they don't score.
Yep.
Georgia hit a 3 and made it weird at the end. But you've got a couple of games there where defensively, you just locked it down when it came late. And that's always Bruce's thing anyway. Like the last few minutes, he always talks about the best defensive players are going to be out there. It's why you've seen games where Tahad's played really well, but then with 3 to 4 minutes to go, Denver comes in. Even if he's not playing well offensively, if it's close, he's like, we need stops. Get stops, and I trust that we can get a bucket or two. So it's something sort of developing with this team and Jen and I talked about it at that under 4 timeout. He said they came in the huddle and they were like, get 4 stops. He's like, the offense, we'll figure out a way to score. Get 4 stops. And so they're definitely showing some ability late to get stops. And they didn't always do that last year. Some of those close games they couldn't. So that's something to sort of keep an eye on. It's a good development for sure. But look, they sit there at 6-0. Bama's 6-1. Everybody else has got at least 2. Handful of teams at 2. Of course, now Tennessee, man, sitting there at 4-3. You got a 4-game lead over Tennessee in terms of trying to win the league. But Florida looked dominant again. A&M just blew the Texas game. That A&M team is better than they're screwing it up right now. That's still a really, really dangerous team, I think. Kentucky got down too much at halftime and came back, and then Vanderbilt, boy, I tweeted out after that game, Auburn's got Vanderbilt on the road on a Tuesday. The game before is at home against Florida. The game after is on the road at Alabama. So the good thing is the league's so hard that and Auburn's already had close games. That Auburn's not going to. I don't think there's like a trap game.
No.
But it's definitely one where you're going to be up and prepared and just jacked for Florida, and then you've got Alabama the next weekend. You better give that game on Tuesday night in Nashville every bit the attention you would give Alabama on Saturday, because they're pretty good offensively.
Very good, and that's a difficult gym to play in. It really is, and it's given Auburn some issues at times throughout Bruce's tenure there at Auburn. And I mean, really, it's realistically in the history of Auburn basketball, it's given some issues. So
close ones.
I'll be interested to see how they respond in that game. And you talked about two emotional basketball games. You've got Todd Golden coming in, that group from Florida. You know what that game means to Bruce and the staff. You know what it means to Florida. Some of those, and they're extremely talented, and they'll be up for that game, and you'll be playing emotionally in that game. I mean, on an emotional high. And then you got to travel to Vandy. That's going to be really, really tough. And then, like you said, it's sandwiched in between that, and then you got to go to Tuscaloosa. So, whew, buddy, I would not want to be the person responsible for getting them mentally focused and locked in for that stretch. But if there's any coach that can do it, I think we've got some really great assistants on the staff, and obviously Bruce is a master motivator, so he'll do what he can. But you're right, that's a really tough stretch.
Yeah, these next three are big in terms of winning the league. Because if you want to win the league, you got to win the winnable games, right? LSU on the road. Saturday you go to Ole Miss, then you come home and you play Oklahoma at 8:00. I hate 8:00 games. Let's see. That's I'm trying to look and see if that's a Tuesday or Wednesday, February 4th. That is a Tuesday. So that's going to be interesting. You've got LSU on the road. They'll travel tomorrow. They'll travel Tuesday afternoon. They'll play the Wednesday night game. They'll get back really late Wednesday night. They'll have Thursday to prepare, and then they'll probably do some kind of walkthrough practice Friday morning, right back on the road Friday afternoon, go to Ole Miss. You'll get back Saturday afternoon, and then you've got a Tuesday game. So pretty, I think from a preparation standpoint, the next three, there's some challenges in there with travel for 2-1-2, and then coming back in your home is on a Tuesday. But three teams that, you have a better roster than. Ole Miss is good, and Ole Miss will be back to that could look like Georgia. That could look like a grinded out. They're going to play good defense. The next three are huge. They're games that you're better than these teams. They're winnable. You get through those three, and now you're looking at it going, you're 9-0. You got 9 left, and you're like, okay, week you can really start to go, what's it gonna take to win the league? I mean, you're at 9-0. If you can get to 9-0, then you start getting into that stretch where now you got to play Florida. Bama comes up. And then you get really close to those last four, which the last four are Ole Miss, Kentucky, A&M, and Bama. So, next three are huge. You got 3 games that are winnable. Not dropping one of these would be massive, massive deal and give you a ton of momentum going into that Florida game, which is after Oklahoma. But yeah, next 3 are winnable. But from a preparation standpoint, some of the timelines could be interesting. As they try to navigate these 3. But I wrote about it, like, they're showing ways to win. To me, that says something. They've won in blowout fashion. They've come from behind. They've grinded. They've had defensive stops late. They've grinded it out. They've won in different ways, and I think that is a character trait of a championship team. That Janai could not play. They could find a way to win. Your guards could shoot terribly. You find a way to win. You're on the road. You find a way to win. So. There's something to be said about all that. They found a way to win without other guys playing well. And that's a really good thing.
Agreed.
That's kind of the silver lining you take at this point of some of these close games. Of course, Tennessee's just a massive win in general. I think Jay Billis just kind of called it a rock fight, which is, I was like, yeah, pretty much. And they did make the officiating was so weird. Like Tennessee, there's more fouls called on Tennessee. So this wasn't a game where they were screwing Auburn. Like
No.
Auburn shot more free throws. It was the inconsistency and like there was some fouls on Janai. There was a couple fouls on Auburn, and there was some on Tennessee too that were ticky-tack. And then there was like tons of contact that they wouldn't call, and then a little bit of contact that they would call, and they would miss. I mean, there was some stuff they missed on the Auburn end. There was some some stuff Auburn did, some screens that were probably moving that they didn't call. They definitely let them play, but then they would call some touch stuff that you're like, okay, now wait a minute. Like, what are we doing? Are we playing physical or are we not playing physical? That's the stuff that drives you crazy officiating is, how do I play if we're going to, how do I play defense if we're going to kind of call it both ways? That was the stuff that was, I think, frustrating. Until it was a hilarious moment. I tweeted about it. It was the foul call on Janai late in the second half where Meshack went up. And I don't know, the commentators thought Janai had his right hand. I didn't see any push from Janai. Like he was straight up with his left arm.
Yeah.
I was literally it was a crazy call in that game. They called a foul on Janai. That was the one where Bruce kind of runs and gets on his knee and is like on it, right? And so there was a moment you couldn't see on TV because they didn't show Barnes. So Bruce is on his knee. Well, Bruce is almost at midcourt on his knee. And at that point, Barnes had kind of walked over. Barnes was probably 10 feet from him, just on the other side. And Barnes is looking at him with a smirk, not like not a rude, like disrespectful. So he was looking at him smirking because Bruce was in such disbelief, and Barnes is looking at him like kind of smiling, like I feel you. And Bruce looks at him and says something, and they kind of have a moment of like, Barnes is looking at Bruce kind of doing that, and Bruce is of course mad because the foul was on Auburn. But they had a moment of looking at each other like, yeah, I don't know. Like even Rick was like, yeah, I get it, man. I don't know what we're doing out here. It was kind of a funny moment of them sort of acknowledging the inconsistency and what was going on. But I don't know. You came out on top. That's all that.
That's all that really matters.
Yeah, all that matters. All right, what you think, LSU? Are you in line with kind of the analytics? 14.82 to 68 is kind of what Torvik thinks. You think that's
I think that's fair.
All right.
I think that's probably a fair assessment of what it's probably going to be. And if that's the score and Auburn's plus 80, then you'll probably will have accomplished, unless it's predominantly foul shooting, right? You will have probably accomplished what you were trying to get out of that game from an offensive efficiency standpoint and back creating a little bit more flow, if that's the score. Now, obviously, we'll see what the game actually looks like, but just on this score alone, you would think that Auburn kind of got back to what it was doing early season and more into a rhythm of what they're trying to accomplish offensively. And I think Auburn's defense will play well enough in this game that they can do that. But on the road in the SEC has been tough this year. So if it's tighter than that, it's not going to surprise me either. But that wouldn't be my expectation going into the game itself.
Yeah, I think Auburn should hold them in the 60s, and assuming you go out there and play well, I would think you could get close to that 80 mark. LSU hasn't, offensively, they're kind of living in about the 70 range probably. So I would think this is a game where Auburn should be able to hold them to 66, 67, 68. The only teams that have scored on Auburn were Iowa State, who's phenomenal and have fantastic guards. North Carolina got to 72. That was a faster pace game. Auburn was up 20. North Carolina had some buckets late. Memphis can score a little bit, got to 76. But again, a game where it was a faster pace game where Auburn's, blowing them out. They got some points. Auburn's playing a lot of guys, second teamers late. So the pace of those games is what got those teams to 70, I think. Not necessarily Auburn playing bad defense. Duke got to 84. They're phenomenal on offense, and that's in Cameron. There's nothing to be ashamed of there. And then Texas squeaked up and got 82 with Auburn gave up way too many points in the second half, and Kaluma caught fire. But in general, getting to 70 is a challenge. I mean, Auburn's not giving up.
No.
Since Texas, 63, 66, 68, 51. That's what Auburn's given up defensively. Missouri only got 68. So outside of the Texas game, nobody's even hit 70 against Auburn in league play. So, yeah, it's one of those games. If Auburn keeps playing defense that way, it's going to take an abnormally bad game defensively from Auburn for teams to get them. Like even if Auburn doesn't shoot or doesn't play well on offense, if they keep playing that way on defense and staying locked in and guards continue to go rebound, they're going to hold you in check.
Yeah.
And it's going to be tough to beat Auburn. But yeah, so I kind of like that. Maybe this is an 80-72, 80-70, maybe 80-69.
Something like that. Yeah. In that area, I can absolutely see that.
Well, go get a W and then come home and prepare for what will be another physical battle against Ole Miss. I'm not sure who Ole Miss plays.
They've got a big one. It's
Did they play Alabama?
no, it's not Alabama. It's a game they got to have. I think it's in Texas. I think it's who they've got. Maybe
I hosted it the other day. Let's see. They host Texas. Yes, they host Texas on Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever. So they're going to have a home game. So I mean, there's certainly a little bit of advantage there. They don't travel. Then they don't travel. So they're, Auburn travel time, go to LSU, come back, travel to Oxford, a little bit extra time for Ole Miss in terms of, film study preparation time, maybe a little bit as they get ready for Auburn. But yeah, Texas, they host Texas and then they host, so big week for them. If they somehow held serve and they'd be 6-3, big week for 2 home games for them.
Yes.
Ole Miss game will be interesting, I guess. Always interesting with Wes Flanagan over there, but that'll be Beard and Pearl. That'll be a physical one.
Yep, two really good coaches that respect each other. And Chris Beard runs really great stuff. They make a lot of tough twos. Probably more of a jump shooting team than I think he would like at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be 2 really good coaches going at it in Oxford, and I'm excited for that matchup as well.
That's a place that Auburn has played fairly well. They had a comeback win. I have to go back and look, but they haven't played poorly there.
No,
but you look at Ole Miss. I mean, a win over BYU, tough loss against Purdue. Beat Louisville. Like Louisville's having a really good year. They beat Louisville on the road.
Yes,
like a drum. They beat Louisville by 23 on the road.
Dismantled by Memphis, and then came back.
Yeah, went to Memphis and got beat up pretty good. But in league play. They were 4-0, but now they've lost 3 in a row. Lost a tough one to State on the road. A&M, like they had A&M beat, and A&M, won that game, I guess, last second. And then they go to Missouri. So, like, really, their last 3 losses are State on the road in overtime.
Yes.
Texas A&M by 1, and at Missouri by 8, and it was a competitive game. So, like, Ole Miss is kind of they've lost 3 in a row, but they've played three of the better teams in the league, and so they've clearly shown themselves to be a team that, is good. They're going to lock you down.
Yep.
They're top, and their defensive efficiency is 13th in the country. So another tough one. All right, let's get out of here. Auburn's 18-1. We'll see how they go. We'll come back. I don't know if we'll try to do 1 a week or 2 a week. We haven't decided yet on if we should just sort of do 1 or if we should do, kind of depends on the schedules.
I think so.
We talked to Bruce on Tuesday morning. We'll talk to him. So maybe we can get one in after we talk to Bruce, after there's a game played. Maybe we can try to do 2 a week, but we'll kind of play it by ear. But we appreciate everybody watching. Go to auburnlive.com and subscribe. Turn on notifications and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Auburn Live YouTube channel. We'd appreciate that. And we'll see you guys next time.